Welcome to League of Lit, where we discuss books, adaptations, and anything else we wish to talk about and tie it to lit because we can. Today we're watching episode 5 of Jules and Monty, and this episode starts wonderfully with Mercutio, Mark Matthews, with a black eye, telling us, well, it's about time somebody else took over the vlog because Monty was never going to share this.
This is a moment where the blinds kind of blur because the title card would lead you to believe this is going to be an episode from Jules's perspective. However, the first face we see is Mark. So even though we saw on the title card Ty, Cliff, and Jules, why are we seeing Mark?
I appreciate how excited Mark was that the camera is now proof of their nonsense that they get into. He can now like rewatch it and be like, oh my gosh, I remember that because I got too drunk last night to remember it. We open at the Kappa party the night before with Mark and Ben desperately looking for Romeo, who may have stolen himself to bed. We're not sure. And then Mark just shouting in this room full of Kappas for Romeo, which you think would not be a good idea considering I imagine the Kappas know that Monty's real name is Romeo. But they find Monty and he's conversing with a woman across the room who we of course know is Jules Kane. There's also a really great moment between Mark and Ben where Ben says, oh, she must be a freshman because they don't know who Jules is. And Mark says, more like fresh meat from a man, am I right? And Ben's like, no, you're not. And I think that was hilarious and such a great little call to the kind of more, I would say, misogynistic language that Shakespeare used, which for the time was very on brand. But it's such a great little moment of them being like, no, you can't say that.
So we're now getting to see hand to hand is Ollie Palmer's kiss, that whole little spiel from Juliet. And we're getting to see what Mark and Ben got to see about Romeo and Juliet's first meeting at the cat party. I mean, it's cute, it's whatever, but it's something.
This scene with Jules and Monty is also a callback to the Shakespearean language and how they introduce it in the actual web series where, you know, if you're in love or if you're drunk, that's when you suddenly start speaking in Shakespeare. And I love it because we get the, you know, for saints have hands, the pilgrim's hands do touch, and palm to palm is Holy Palmer's kiss. It's such a great moment, and I also just love that Mark and Ben are like, what are they talking about? What is happening in this room right now? Mark and Ben then see Monty and Jules making out, which we, of course, know from episode 3 and episode 4, seeing Monty and then Jules' perspective of the aftermath, that this happened at this party. Then Ty shows up and is mad that there's a camera. He says, this is not Girls Gone Wild. Get out of this party. I know you're Mutau Gamma. I am being nice. Leave. And Mark, as Mercutio, can't just let anything go. So, of course, he does what Mercutio does best in Romeo and Juliet, and he taunts Tybalt, calling him a rat catcher. Will you dance? All that good stuff. And then Tybalt, Ty, punches Mark in the face, which explains the black eye that he has, and I love that he's like, oh my god, I forgot that happened. Crazy. Mark also shows us footage that he took of Rose and Monty breaking up in a stairwell, which is just another really great moment, and another great behind-the-scenes moment in the vlogs is them filming this particular moment. But I just love when he's like, I'm gonna watch this, and then I'm gonna yell, and then they're gonna both tell me to shut up. It's such a fun way to include Rosalind in the story, and I also just like, I feel bad for Rosalind reading Romeo and Juliet, but of course, you know, in the end of Romeo and Juliet are dead and Rosalind's not, so maybe she got the better end of the stick there, but yeah, I just feel bad for Rosalind, because I mean, if you didn't like the girl, just break up with her. It's not that hard.
So this confessional style of vlog it fits with where we're at in the story because it's a lot of, oh my gosh, what happened? Here we go. And Mark's portion, which is over half of the video, it gives us a outsider's perspective on what Jules and Monty are experiencing. And I think that's a very clever tactic with storytelling. It's not necessarily what we particularly get to see per se in the source material, because as an audience, we're getting to see way more because we're obviously going to get to see full size because it's all playing in front of us on the stage. But with this being in the vlog format, you got to find the different ways. And the part that I'm curious about is how did Mark manage to get his portion, which is the biggest portion of the video, on Monty's channel? Like, how'd you do that, dude? And that's some of the suspension of disbelief I think comes with web series in general that are in this vlog style format is, okay, how did we manage that? How do certain videos get posted on Lizzie's blog without it being Lizzie? Like, you got to find different ways to explain that. But because I think of the nature of Jules and Monty, it's easy to suspend that disbelief. And if you don't suspend it now with this episode, there are certain things that happen later where certain episodes feel like it's a blend of the two vlogs instead of like one episode being Jules and one episode being Monty. And I think that is part of the cleverness that exists with Ed and Imogen's writing and the way that they crafted and created this series.
Now, Mark cuts the camera because Monty comes back into the room, and then we're outside with Monty. One of my favorite things about being able to have the behind-the-scenes footage that we were given with Jules and Monty is that we learned a lot about the process of making the entirety of Jules and Monty. And I love that clearly this is set at what would be the beginning of a semester, so relatively speaking, August or September. And one of my favorite things about this moment when we see Monty outside, which we're about to have the beautiful balcony scene, you know, essentially the scene where Romeo says that Juliet is the sun, all that good stuff. And they're filming this in, I want to say in December, either November or December. So it's freezing outside. They're in Massachusetts, which is where Tufts University is. And so it's cold. And Ed, who plays Monty, had to go outside in this really cold, windy weather and film this balcony scene where he sees into Jules's window and, you know, does his whole monologue and is like, how do I get inside there and find her? It's a great moment in the behind the scenes because you just really feel for Ed and also for all of the incredible people involved, because there was a boom mic, there's a camera, there are people who have to be in charge of making this. So it was definitely shows the commitment to the craftsmanship of making the entirety of Jules and Monty.
And our episode ends with Monty seemingly finding Jules through the window, and we get the balcony scene, if you will, or at least the starts of it, when with what soft light through yonder window breaks. And then it's like, oh crap, no, that legit is her. And it's just kind of, it's one of those moments where, yes, you can tell Monty is lost in his thoughts, but at the same time, he is truly, you can see how enamored he is with Jules. And we'll just kind of see as the series progresses how all of that plays out. So, thanks again for watching. We hope that you are enjoying this like we are, and we will see you next episode. Thanks for tuning in to this very special edition of League of Lit.
Make sure that you follow us at League of Lit Podcast on Instagram and League of Lit Pod on TikTok.
If you have any suggestions for an episode, feel free to leave a comment at leagueoflit.tumblr.com.